Welcome to our Amud Yomi Shiur. Everybody here in Avos Shalom, everybody in Torah anytime, Kol HaLashon in our YouTube channel. Today's Chaf Zayin of Tafshin Pei Gimel, another lovely day with another lovely Amud Gemore. We're in Bava Metzia, Daf Kuf Daled Amud Aleph, although right now we are still at the end of the previous Amud, which is the Mishnah over here, Amikabel Sod Mechavero. It's the second Amud of the Perek, the ninth Perek of Bava Metzia. The topic that we discussed is the topic of Arisus and Chachirus. What does that mean? Is it all Chinese for us? No. An Aris is a person who works in someone else's field, and the agreement is that he takes percentage in the fruit. Usually he takes less. He takes a half, a third, or a quarter of the field of the fruit that the soda yields. And sometimes it takes more, right? Says Tosis, we saw yesterday, sometimes the Oris takes more than the Balabais if he invested and he brought in the seeds. And we also have another kind of agreement called Chachirus. What's a Chachir? It's called leasing in English, but Lamaisa, what Chachirus means practically is that the person is like a renter, but with fruit. In other words, he has to pay a set amount of fruit per year. And even if the field doesn't actually yield that fruit, doesn't make a difference. He still has to provide him X amount of fruit, maybe money equivalent of that fruit if he does make enough, but it's a set amount, that's chachirus. Well, arisus depends on the percentage. That's an ois and that's a chachir, all very nice. We saw yesterday, this is still a debt I have to you from yesterday. A question that I asked yesterday was, we saw that when it comes to investment, we saw that the Baal Abai is supposed to invest all the basic things, right? The basic fence, the basic tools are supposed to be provided by Baal Abais to give the Oris or the Chochir, to give them a normal work environment. However, the extras, if the person who's a worker wants to have something extra to make his life easier, let's say he wants to have extra shmira so he doesn't have to be shomer himself, then he has to provide it himself. We saw an exception to that rule, and I don't really have an answer to my question. Basically, we saw one thing that doesn't fall into that category, and these are the konim. What are the konim? Those reeds, those poles or staves that keep the geffen, the vine, standing upright, they change every year. They change every year. In other words, they're not that stable, and every year you plant new vine, so every time you have to put new poles. Those poles are provided by both sides. That's what the Mishnah says. Says the Ritva, providing there's no other agreement. It's a new town. Nothing, there's no minhag in that town. Then we say the right thing to do is that they should split it, and both Balabais and Oris should pay for the poles. You have to bring them. But otherwise, if there's a known minhag, like we saw Rav Yosef says in Bovel, the Oris doesn't get the straw, then we have a minhag like minhag HaMokah, minhag HaMedina. Everything goes by minhag HaMedina. Let's start the Mishnah now. Amikabel sode me chaveiroi. Now we're still talking about either an Oris or a Chochir, and they accepted the sode from their friend in order to work the field. The Beis HaShlochin or Beis HaIlan. Now that sode has amazing, nice features that would attract any good Oris to work there. Beis HaShlochin is a soda which needs a lot of water. Now, it's not Beis Habal that gets irrigated by the rain, watered by the rain, but rather it has a river next door to it, and the river is a very good source, convenient source of irrigation. Okay, Oy Beis HaIlan, let's say that field, which is a white field, which is a wheat field, that field has some trees in it. Let's say there's one big tree that yields a lot of fruit. What did we say yesterday? Sometimes Arisim would have it easy. Why? They would work the field, but part of their salary would be the fruit of the tree. The field itself, the wheat and the barley, is hard to work. It's hard work, and they get a third, let's say. Besides that, part of the agreement is that they get the fruit, some of the fruit of the tree, that's much easier, nicer. It's also ready to eat, not work. That's a big attraction for an Oris to come and work in that field. It's like good work conditions, either because there's a river there or because the field has a nice tree over there, which is a nice source of getting your salary. What happens one sunny day? Yova Shamayan All of a sudden, unexpectedly, the entire river or whatever that is, not a river, the spring went dry somehow, dry season. Somehow the tree was cut off. So now the main feature that made the Oris pay, how much did the Oris pay? Let's say he pays a lot. He pays, I don't know, 50 tons a year. Yeah, let's say percentage is the Oris, or the Chochir pays, I don't know, a set amount, let's say 50 tons. So now the Oris may say, hey, I came here and I'm willing to pay a lot of, fruit, 50 tons a year, because it has that amazing feature. But now that feature is gone. Now the river is gone. Now the tree is gone. Why should I pay as much? No 50 tons anymore. Maybe 45. You can't do that. Because it was not mentioned at all as a condition, nobody spoke about it. It wasn't said that that's a condition. You're lucky that you had a tree in your field. That's sheer luck. It's not something, that was mentioned. Yeah, imagine yourself. I'm not saying halacha l'maisa. Somebody rents an apartment and there's very nice view, but he did not expect the view. The view wasn't mentioned. There was very nice view. Somebody built, and blocked the view. Half a year into the rent. I'm not saying halacha l'maisa. L'choira, you can't say I have no view now. I'm going to pay less. Nobody spoke about the view. Makes sense. You like the view and it's nice, but it wasn't something that we discussed. And therefore, although the feature, the attraction is gone, you still have to pay the same and not menakim in chichuroi. You can't now pay less chachirus per year because now the good feature is gone. That's the reisha. However, says the seifa, im omaloi, if one told the other, meaning the oris told the balabos, chachar lisode beis hashlochin zoi. You have 5 fields. This is the one I want. Sode beis hashlochin zoi. I want this beis hashlochin that has a nice spring next to it. I'd like to have that soda with the tree in it. Out of all 10 fields you have, I want the one with the tree. Although it's not a condition, it was mentioned. It was mentioned. And therefore, if now the spring has dried out and the ilan is now cut off, now he takes away from the chachira and says, no, I mentioned mefurash that I like that one with the tree. I like that field with the spring. And therefore, when the spring's gone and the tree is gone, I'm not paying you the, exorbitant amount of 50 per year. I'm paying you now, 45 per year, 40, less. And that, in that case, the chachir would be right. And so far, as the Gemara is going to say, that also applies to not just the chachir, also an oris. An oris would say, you know why I was agreeing to give you half? Half is a lot because it's really a super duper field with a tree. Now, there's no tree anymore. From now on, I'm giving you not half. I'm giving you whatever, a third. Okay. Says the Gemara, Echidami, what is the story? Exactly what happened. Ilema the Yovash Rabba. Yeah. Now, let's say that, imagine yourselves, we don't have to draw that in the, on the board. Yeah. There's a field, not exactly next to the field. There's a great river. There's a big river. And as we know, we've seen many times, there are canals that go from the river into the field. Okay? There's a river, field, and there's a connecting either man-made or HaKadosh Baruch Hu made, like a smaller brook or a man-made canal, like an aqueduct that connects the two. So now, Frag the Gemara, what exactly went dry over here? Let's try and, micromanage the story here. If you tell me that the great river, now that great river, it's not does not only irrigate one field, the field of our dear Oris, it irrigates 100 fields. So if you say that the great river all went dry all of a sudden, why do we say that the chachir doesn't have to pay less? Why don't we say that he has to pay him less? Forget about the unclear agreement. Stop. There's another reason why now you cannot demand of the chachir the same amount every year now that the thing is dried. What's a chachir again? He's supposed to be giving a set amount every year. You have less, you have more, I don't care. In other words, he always has to give him 50 tons, whether he made 100 tons or he made 40 tons. He always has to give him 50 tons, unless they change your agreement one day. But now, if the great river, which is the source of the entire area, went dry, If so, namely, the oris should tell the person, the Baal Abais, who still demands the same amount of fruit, or maybe it's equivalent in money, Makas Medina, it's a Makas Medina, Makat Medina, which means it's a trouble by everyone. It's a general, regional problem that everyone suffers from. And we see later on, we're going to see, and yeah, that let's say there's locust that comes, or let's say there's big heat wave or fire, like nowadays in the world. It's not my fault. How can you ask of me to give you the same set amount when the conditions of everybody else of the whole area have changed? How do you suppose? How am I supposed to even theoretically provide you with 50 tons when the entire area went kaput? As opposed to, by the way, as opposed to if the locust only came to his field and not to any other field, if it's something local only of the field of the chochir and the Baal Habayis, then the Baal Habayis can tell him it's your bad luck. You see, everyone else is they didn't get the chagav, they don't have the trouble, they don't have the robbers that came to them. Then you can say you have mazal chagoram. Yeah, do tshuva. That's your problem. You so it's not a general problem. We see it also with Xelos, Kokos, and Bavakama. In any event, but if it's a general problem, forget about their conditions. The mere fact that it's a general issue here, that alone, that is of itself means Balabais cannot be such a yeke, such a demanding guy and demand, I still want my 50 tons every year. You see, nobody else can provide anything anymore. Omar of Papa. Therefore, of Papa is telling us what's the story here. The Yovesh Nahara Zuta. In other words, the small river, that river that connects between the big river that still runs nice and flows very nicely, but the small one, the personal one, so to speak, that connects between the big field and between the big river and the field, that personal corner there, that conductor, that went dry, the small river, and therefore, so what's the taina? The Omerlei Balabais now tells the Oris, the Omerlei Ibailach Latuye Bedavla. You should have brought the water with what? Sorry, hard work. You should have taken buckets. What's davla? We've seen many times. Dli. Davla is a dli. Take a bucket and what? And just walk back and forth and irrigate the field. It's your problem. It's one personal issue of yours. It's not a general problem. You're claiming it's impossible? It's possible. Work harder, mister. Don't be such a lazy mefunek. And therefore, since I demand that's a justifiable demand, and therefore you have to keep giving me the same amount every year. Now we go to the Mishnah. You claim that the only reason you wanted that field is because it's such an easy peasy thing. It's such an easy thing to irrigate because there is a river that flows right through. That was never mentioned. It was your pure luck. Yeah, you happened to fall on that field. Nothing was mentioned in the contract or Baal Peh. And therefore, the feature is gone. Nobody said that the feature is the reason for giving me the 50 tons. Now the feature is gone. You don't have the small river. You still have to give me 50 tons because nothing was mentioned between us regarding that. That's the pshat of the Mishnah. Comes of Papa with another general statement. Omar of Papa. Now we're starting today's Amud. Omar of Papa. Yes, Amud is Le'ilu Nishmas Avi Moiri Menachem Ben Akiva. Omar of Papa. Hani Tati Masnisa Kamaisa. How many Mishnahs have we seen so far since the beginning of the parak? Svei. We saw two Mishnahs, Tarti Masnisa Kamaisa. Rav Papa is stopping here in the Gemara and says those first two Mishnahs, the first two Mishnahs which was just seen, Meshkachasla, they can be found, they can apply Ben Bechachranusa, Ben Bekablanusa. They apply to either Chachir or Kablan. Let's think. Why? Let's think. What did the first Mishnah say? First Mishnah, the beginning of the first Mishnah said that some people like to do what? To cut with the sickle, right? And some of them prefer to pull out with the root. That applies to both chochir and sochir. Who cares whether it's you work by percentage or you work by set amount? It's a question of how physically you're going to work the land. It applies to both, right? Very nice. Now, what about the second Mishnah? Same thing. The second Mishnah told us that agreements should be respected and you keep the agreement even though conditions changed, because you never mentioned the condition as a condition, excuse the pun, yeah, even though the feature is gone. That applies to both arisus. Arisus is percentage. The oris would come and say, hey, that nice carob, that nice fig tree that I would eat every day with checking the bugs, oh, it's not there anymore. I'm only here for the tree. He never mentioned that. No, no, no. I want to give you. I spoke about giving you half, 50% because of the tree. Now I'll give you 40%. No, no, no way. Only in the Seifa when he was mentioned. And the same applies to who? The Chochir. The Chochir says, you know, I was giving you 50 tons a year. 50 tons a year with such a beautiful tree. No tree. No, they're not 50. I'm going to give you a set 40 amount, 40 tons per year. So the halacha applies to both Chachirus and Kablanus. Mikan ve'elach, the Mishnais we're going to see from now on, all the Mishnais from now till the end of the parak, which will be discussing Chachirus and Arisus, the Isa bekablanusa, Leisa bechachranusa, the Isa bechachranusa, Leisa bekablanusa. The Mishnais are either or. Whichever Mishnah discusses a kablan does not apply to a chochir. A kablan is an oris, and the one that applies to a chocher does not apply to an oris. How? Rashi says he's going to explain each Mishnah when we get there. We'll cross the bridge when we get there. Yes. Question time. Im Omar. Oh, this is very interesting. Now, Im Omar lo chachor li sode beis hashlochin zeh. What was the second case of the Mishnah? What was the Seifa? When can the Chochir or the Ori say, I'm now giving you less because that special feature, that candy that I have there is gone? Oh, know this? I'm paying you less. When is he right? When is he right? When he said, Sada beis hashlochin zeh. I mentioned to you, and I'm the Chochir, and I said, or the Oris, I want this field. They're sitting in the air-conditioned office. And they look in the video in all 5 fields that the guy has, and the Chochir or the Ori says, I want this one with the tree. Even though I didn't make a whole Tnei B'nai Gad B'nai Reuven, whole if this and that, Lamaisa, he mentioned, I want that field with a tree. Blink, blink, blink. So then it's mashma that the tree is the attraction, and I'm giving you 50 tons a year for that field with a tree. Mashma that if the tree is gone, no 50, maybe 40, whatever, less. Okay, frag the Gemara v'amai. Why is that? Lema lei, yeah. Let's say, why won't we say Shma be'alma amri lecho? When I mention to you, says who? Why can't the Balabais? We're not defending Balabais. Why can't you tell the Oris when I told you? Let's say it wasn't a picture. Let's say they were speaking, yeah. And when I told you, you know, the tree with the field, I just mentioned a name. It was an adjective, a description, that all. Identification is a very good word. In other words, I wasn't telling you because there's a tree. Even if there's no tree there, I just call it, you know, the field with a tree, because that's the name of the place. And now the Gemara is going to prove that point, that sometimes features are not mentioned as an existing thing, is just a symbol or an way of identification. Milo Tanya, didn't we learn in the Brisa, in Bava the Zayin Amud Aleph in the bottom, it says, the person tells his friend, I'm selling you offal, dirt, earth. Earth is worth money. Yeah, somebody told me in Ukraine, in some countries, in Moldova, they have very good earth. They sell their earth to richer countries in the West. And it's a very foolish thing to do, she said, but they sell the earth. The earth is very fertile. They actually sell truckloads of earth to the richer countries. And yeah, so they can cultivate their things. So I'm selling you earth, base to offal, or maybe in this case, you can also plant things. How much is a ko? Or is a lot. I'm selling you a base ko offal. The guy comes to the field, and what happens? He comes to the place. Instead of a ko, there's letech. Letech is half the core, half of the core. Half. You promised core, liar. You're giving me a letter? No, it's a good deal. That's a good deal. You only sold him a name, a description, an identification way. It's a place called Beis Kol, Behuda Miskari Beis Kol. If everybody in the neighborhood calls it Beis Kol, because it used to be Kol, now it's been shaven down to have to letech, people still call it Beis Kol. Are you aware of the existence of a very fancy building project in Yerushalayim? I don't know, Jerusalem Estate, I think it's called. Yeah, where all the Amerikaim Ashirim buy their houses. Oh, what did you say? What Schneller? Schneller is a army base. I bet you the 90% of Meir Sharm Geula called it place Schneller. It's an army base. It's an army base? No army base. It's full of very nice rich chutznikim. Which army base? It's still called that way. There's a place in Bnei Brak called Hapardes. I'm not 100% sure, but I think there's no, not even one orange grows. Maybe part of it, yeah? Why is it called a Pardes? It used to be a Pardes. Now it's a building place, still called a Pardes. Yeah, in America, I'm sure there are places like that. Yeah. In other words, yeah, the name sticks. Oh, that's what's going on over here. If every kid in the neighborhood calls that place Beis Kol, yeah, Mimela, Beis Kol is the name of the place, even though it's half the car. I'm not describing it to you with the detail as a Tanai. I'm just giving it the common name, the name that it's called, the alias. That's all. And they say, oh, and let's see more examples. I'm selling you that place, and it's called the Kerem, the vineyard. You don't see even one gef in there. All you see there is, I don't know, a gas station and I don't know, some candy store. There are no gfonim there. Still, that belongs to him, and the deal is a good deal. He sold him a name. He described it. Providing that people all around really call it Kerem, so it's not a Mekach. You should have known. That's how people colloquially call it. Pardes and I don't know all the examples, but another example, a person sells the Pardes. Pardes is for Rimoinim. There's not even one pomegranate there. Rosh Hashanah is coming soon. You're in trouble. Not one Rimon over there. The whole part. The guy was imagining a Pardes Rimoinim. He comes there. He sees, I don't know, some cats and dogs running in the garbage. No Rimonim whatsoever. Yeah, it's a good deal. It's a good sale. He sold him. Excuse me. The name of the place that's called a Pardes Rimonim. Alma. So what do we see from all these three examples? I'm not sure we need all three examples. Actually, it occurs to me now. Alma. That is to say. Therefore, we see that Omerle Shma be'alma amri lecha. When I described the place to you, I wasn't describing it saying, there is a tree and therefore, no. I called it the tree place because that's how people call it. That's all. I'm not exactly telling you that this is what you have there and this is what you don't. Here too. Why can the Balabais tell him, I just described it to you as a name, as a way to identify, as you say, and that's it. Right? And why over here get so nitpicking and say, oh, no tree, no deal anymore. The tree is what I was thinking about all the time. Now that the tree is dead, I'm paying you half the price. No, I just described it as the tree place. That's how it's called in Misrad Rishum. And that's how the place is called. That's all. Why don't we say it over here? And in Bava Basra, when it comes to a sale, we do say that. What's the difference? Omar Shmuel, Machloikes, Shmuel and Ravina, two different answers. Omar Shmuel, Loikasha, depends who says it. Many statements in the world of psychology depends very, very much who is the person who says those things, right? I can give you many examples offline, yeah? Think of certain statements coming from one person is a compliment, from another person it's a challenge, yeah? Let's see what the Gemara says over here. Omer Shmuel Lokash, it's not difficult. One case, you tell me which case. The Omerli Machkir Lechoicher. When the Machkir, the Balabais, the landlord, says it to the Choicher, then what is his interest? Yeah, the Gemara is going to say it soon. The Omerli Choicher LeMachkir. The other case is when the Choicher, having completely different interests and having his eye on the candy, on the tree, on the river, if he's the one who mentioned it, then the halacha is different. And the Gemara elaborates, and I think you know already the answer. Omerli machkir lechoicher. Then machkir, 50 tons? Oh, yeah. I want 50 tons, regardless of the tree. Of course. The machkir interest is what? To always cash in big amounts, whether or not the feature is there, right? Whether the river will go dry or not, yeah? Then Shmo be'alma Omer lei. Why did he mention the tree as the name? That's the name of the place. He wasn't going, he did not mean to condition it, obviously. He wants to get his big money regardless of the existence of the tree. Why did he mention the tree? Because that's how every kid in the neighborhood calls it. So he just mentioned the name. That's just the name, that's all. If the choicher, which obviously he's not interested in paying a lot, I'm paying 50, because of the tree, then kpeda, he's makpid, he's only willing to give big money, and he mentioned the tree as a condition to pay big money. No big tree, no big money, because it's understood as by itself Coming from him, it's a condition. Coming from Balabais, it's just a name. Obviously, it wasn't a condition of Mamish Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven. If tree, then money. If no tree, no money. Then it would be a question. Everything was ambiguous. But the mention of the tree depends who says it. The Balabais calls it that when he's right. People do call it. Fields have names. Houses have names in Chutzat, right? Houses in Europe, estates. Yeah. Yeah, first time I was in Europe, I was surprised. A house has a name. Yeah, in Gibraltar and in Switzerland, many places. So yeah, in some places in Europe, actually, old houses, registered houses from like 300 years ago, they have a name. The house has a name. Yeah, the house has a name. Yeah, fortress house. It's not a fortress. It's a name of a house, and it's called that way legally. Yeah, so he calls it the name. He's not making a condition. He always wants to get the money. But Shenken, the renter, not the renter exactly, the chochi or the oris, no, they obviously mean they want the fancy tree field because of the fancy tree. No fancy tree, no money. That's their logic, and they're both right. Depends who was the one who initiated, who's the one who mentioned it, and who's the one who didn't mention it. You can ask a question if both mentioned it. That's a good question, actually. I don't know. But whoever one started off, I guess, whoever is more into mentioning the name, he's the one, depends on him. The halacha depends on that. We'll get to the mission, okay? Yeah, get to the Mishnah and then another question session. Ravina Omar. Oh, Ravina gives you another answer. Idi ve'idi, in both cases, where the existence of the tree of the river is a condition, and when it's not a condition, idi ve'idi, the omerli machkir lechoicher. In both cases, the Baal Bais mentioned it to the choicher. How come? So how come sometimes we say it's a real condition, and sometimes we say it's just a description, just an offhanded name, stam, a way of speech? Why? It says very, very goinish. Midika Omar zeh. I mentioned the air-conditioned office before, not stam as an example. I had an agenda. Midika Omar zeh, when he says this field, Michlal, that is to say, the kai begavoa skinan. When he says, they drive around in the Baal Bais's Jeep, around the fields, and he's deciding which field is going to work next year, and the Baal Bais stops the Jeep and says, this field, so they're in the field or right next to the field. If so, Beis HaShlochin, lama la. So why is he adding the words Beis HaShlochin? If he just wants to, it's a goinish. If he wants to describe the field, why does he have to mention Beis HaShlochin and give it any names? The field, you pointed the field already. So to say Beis HaShlochin is redundant. Yeah? The Ko'omer le Beis HaShlochin kedekai mahashta must be, you mentioned this field, so we know which field it is, mister. And on top of that, you mentioned with the river, 50 tons, or with that nice tree, candy dangling, that mashma yubalabais are roimes, strongly thick hint that you want to have that special feature. That's why asking for 50 tons. Masha'enka, and in the case of Bava Basra, you sit in an air-conditioned office, and there are no pictures, no videos there, all times. And what? You discuss Balpeh, the field is not next to you. Then I spoke about the field with the tree. I wanted to describe to you which field I'm talking about. That's all. Imela, that was basic description, because the field is not there to point at. Therefore, there, the mention of the tree, or the mention of the river, and the cattle of the bird, whatever the thing is, what is just a way to describe, because the field's not there. I have to describe it. And I made a condition. It wasn't a condition. Yoinish. Questions and comments? Yes. We're going to start the next Mishnah after that question session. Says the Heilige Mishnah. Lazy bum, or maybe another reason. A person accepted the field from his friend, and now the field, what happened? He's movira. He keeps it. He lays it fallow. In other words, he's not choirish, not zera, not plowing, not doing anything. He's on vacation. Maybe he's sick. I don't know. Lamaisa is not working the entire year. He's not doing anything. And the field, surprise, surprise, the field doesn't yield anything. No pain, no gain, as it says in the posuk. Yeah. Then what do? He still has to pay. Why? Shomin oiso kamere uelasois. You have to assess how much would the field would have provided had you been working with this weather condition. V'chula. Let's bring the experts, agriculture experts. How much would the field bring had it been treated properly? And he has to give him that amount. That's a big chiddush, by the way. Why? Because we're talking about the percentage guy. If we speak about, you're going to like this. Says Rashi, We promised that the following Mishnahs are going to talk either about Oris or a Chochir. This Mishnah does not talk about a Chochir because a Chochir is Pashut. A Chochir is the guy who has to pay set amount regardless to the produce, right? So of course he has to pay the set amount. However, the Chiddush is a guy who works by percentage is what? Yeah, works with percentage. Percentage of 100, 50% is 50. 50 is 25. But if he did zero, he would say, sorry, zero. It's not my fault. Yes, my fault. Who cares? I'm supposed to give a percentage of the produce. If there's no produce, no percentage, he can kick me. But Lamaisa, there's no production, no produce. I'm not paying you anything. Why does he have to give him a percentage of the would have been? Why? Says the Mishnah, Shekach koisev loy. It was accepted amongst people, amongst Balabatim, mark my words. It was accepted among people to do the following, to write the following. Im oiver veloy avid shalom b'meitova. There was an accepted norm. Mark these words, and soon you'll know why. It was not a Turkonos Chazal. It was not accepted by Chazal. It was a normal Balabatish social norm, social, economical, financial, business norm to write that, he wants to be secure. The Balabais, percentage, I want my minimum. And the percentage was that even if I don't make any percentage and I'm not going to work anything at all, I'm going to take a sabbatical year off in the Bahamas and Acapulco and leave the field alone, I would still have to pay you b'meitova, with the best, meaning the same way the field would have done had I been working there. And because of this agreement, that agreement is binding, even though it's not an agreement made by Chazal or encouraged by Chazal, that because it's an agreement between people, it's binding. What's your question? Very good. Good question of Tosfos. Zok the Gemara, very good question. Very good question. What's a Chiddush? Every agreement in Chosh and Mishpat, we've seen a million times, Chosh and Mishpat is flexible. Two adults consenting works in Chosh and Mishpat. I want to buy a shirt for $1 million. I don't know, ich weiß, sell you my house if you jump like a frog. Anything can work in Chosh and Mishpat, almost, except for Ribis and Shmita. So very good. What's the Chiddush? Very good. Dr. Gmore, Rabbi Meir hoya doiresh loshan hedyoid. Rabbi Meir, the master of the Mishnah, Stam Mishnah, Rabbi Meir, Stam Mishnah, Rabbi Meir hoya doiresh loshan hedyoid. What's dosh loshan hedyoid? Rabbi Meir would treat seriously, like a drosha, the words that has came in the agreements, the operating, that are mentioned between regular people. Rektoisus, what's the Chiddush? Listen to this. Ooh. Say Tosfos and the Rosh, they say even if the agreement wasn't written, if it's normal in that region, it is binding. That's already a Chiddush. This is an agreement done by, 50, 60% of the people. Although our dear friends from the field, Reuven and Shimon, did not make this agreement, and it's not an agreement that Chazal make you make, but because it's the normal thing done by many people, it's binding even if it wasn't mentioned, because it became such a strong social norm that at the Tanoim back that to the point, it's a little bit, I'm saying it whispering, like a Chreistot Sofer. Remember Chreistot Sofer? If I write a star that I owe you money, or that I sell a field without a Chreis, it's Kilo Chreis is written. It was just a mistake. The assumption is, says Shmuel, Daf Yudalid, and Daf in Bava Basra, in the whatever over there, that really it's binding. That's such a strong norm that even if it wasn't mentioned, Kilo it was mentioned. Wow, that's a Chiddush. Titania, where do we see Rabbi Meir saying it? Well, you also said Stam Mishnah Rabbi Meir. We also see it in the Braisa, Titania. Rabbi Meir Oimer. Now we see it outright. Rabbi Meir Oimer, Im Oiver velo Avid, Eshalem b'meitov. If I, says who? Says the worker, the Oris, the Chochir, if I will just let it lay fallow without working at all, 1 year Shmita without, of course, I'm not a real Shmita, He's making his own Shmita in Chutz La'aretz, not working, I still have to pay you properly, so he has to pay properly, even if it wasn't mentioned in their actual agreement. Rabbi Yehuda, now the Gemara is going to give us at least another 3 examples of Tanoim who took Loshan Hedyot, Loshan Balabatim seriously and went along with it. Case number 2. Rabbi Yehuda Edosh Loshan Hedyot, the Tanya, it says in the Braisa. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Adam may be korban oshir al ishtoi. A person has to bring a korban of a rich man over his wife. What does that mean? It means as follows. A lady got married and she had old debts. She came to the wedding at the end of the Sheva Bracha. She says, "Darling, would you mind paying my $1 million debt? Because I had to buy a new designer dress every week when I was in Shidduchim, accumulated $1 million. Yeah, if you don't mind paying." That's an interesting question. So now, what about korban? That's another question. Yeah, the Gosa, she says that it doesn't have to. What about korbanos? Let's say that person, the man, his wife says, dear husband, I have korbanos that I have to bring. Yeah. And let's say, whichever korban is a chiyuv. Let's say there's a korban that she really had to bring. She turned on the light by mistake. Forgetting it's Shabbos, a half a year before the chasana. Now she has to bring a korban. Who's going to pay for that korban? The husband. The husband is mechuv to provide her with all her needs. So if there's a korban that she has to bring, such as chatas or oshom, she ate chelev by mistake, chelev is, whatever, sofik chelev, then what? Then he has to bring her a korbanos. He has to provide for that. What about if she gave birth after the marriage? She gave birth. Okay, mazel tov, mazel tov. And now he's a rich guy. He's a rich guy. Ferrari, Tesla, and what? He drives with Tesla to Beis Hamikdash to bring his wife's korban after birth. What kind of korban does the woman have to bring after birth? You're going to tell me what? Two birds. Not so simple. If the lady is poor, she brings one bird for chatas and one for oila. Yeah. However, if she's rich, then she brings one keves. She brings a shein, a shepsele. Oh, 1 second. Conceptually, if she's rich, then she brings, you're onto something. She brings what? A keves leoila and a birdie for chatas. Now comes the husband who's rich, and she's also, he bought her own Tesla. She is bejeweled from top to bottom. But says the husband, I'm not paying for her as a rich korban because she's poor. Why? It's not her money. All the money she makes goes to me. Let's say they're the traditional way, yeah? Whatever the wife owns goes to the husband. So although she has jewelry from here to there and fancy cars, really it all belongs to me. And I am treating her as poor because really she be'etzem is poor because everything she has is owned by me, and I'm just giving her a lot of food because of I give her mizoinas. But be'etzem she's poor. So then we say no. Why not? It's a good question. We're going to see it soon. But the halacha is because he's rich, he has to treat his wife as rich and give her korban, pay for her korban of rich, and she'll bring a keves and a bird and not a bird and a bird. Okay? Rak rega. V'chen kol korban v'korban she chayeves. Every korban that she has to bring, he has to provide her. Yeah? Let's say she turned on the light by mistake Shabbos. Yeah? He has to give her a nice sheep. Yeah? Then there's no choice. It's not or levayoyred. Now, wait a second. What about korbanos of nedorim and nedovas? That he doesn't have to pay. Let's say she wakes up one morning and says, she got a very inspirational email message from the lady's emails. She feels so spiritual. She wants to bring a nice big cow to Beis Hamikdash. Is a korban ola just for the spiritual feeling. That's very nice. He doesn't have to pay for that. He only has to pay for choivos, for korbanos. She has to bring chatas, oshom, leda, not for her inspirational korbanos, which would be shlomim or oila. Now, what about divorce? It ended up badly. Somehow, whatever, he bought her only 2 Teslas, not 3, whatever, they divorced at the end. Now, what happens if she has korbanos that she still owes from during the marriage? Now they got divorced and she still owes korbanos. Does he have to pay that after the marriage? Because she became chayiv in the korbanos while she was married. No, he doesn't. He doesn't. In other words, he has to pay for korbanos before the marriage while they're married. But after the marriage, he doesn't have all the debts. She turned on the light half a year before the divorce, and after the divorce, he doesn't have to pay. I'm playing both games now. It's really two Rishonim, and I'm telling you all the Meforshim together. Now, why is that? Why? Well, why these rules? Who said? Maybe nothing, maybe everything. You know why? Simply because that's what people used to write. Shekach koisev lo. This is what the husband would write to his wife. Achrais the islach alai min kidmas deno. There are 2 ways, there are 2 girsos here. Either the husband writes to his wife when they get married, he writes to her, darling, in the ksuba, I'm writing all debts, all achrais you have upon me. I'm responsible for anything from kidmas deno, from even before we were married. So he has to pay her for all the korbanos because that's what he writes. That's what he writes. If he wrote it, you're asking what's the chiddush? Even if he doesn't write, it's kilo embedded in the ksuba that all the debts of korbanos, not necessarily secular debts, it's another sugya, he has to pay for. What about the other way? The other way, she writes to him in the receipt of the ksuba. Yes, there is such a thing. She got her ksuba. The accepted thing in the receipt is to write, I have no claims anymore whatsoever, including the korbanos. Even though there's still pending korbanos, I still have korban from chatas, osham, leda, from the marriage, which were not yet brought to Beis Hamikdash. When she writes, I received everything, it means everything, including korbanos. The kids we see one thing, that all the agreements between husband and wife in korbanos go according to what's accepted to be written at the wedding, and lo aleinu, in case of divorce, at the receipt of the ksuba. I'm combining all the different rishonim here, and it's all true in the Elu Belu Divrei Elokim Chaim. And that's it. So Mimela, we see that the words of the korban, the words of ksuba, even it's not a ksuba initiated by Chazal. It's not something Chazal told you to put. Chazal are very, very particular about Loshen ksuba. If it became accepted social norm to write that shtickle in the ksuba, it's mechayiv you, even if you didn't write it. Wow. And you have to pay all your wife's costs. In the dates, what do young people talk about in dates? When Beis Hamikdash will be built, in the second or third date, he's going to casually ask her, when they have a date in the Ramada, any korbanos? What's your korbanos status? In the CV, they're right. How many korbanos does she owe? So you should know what to expect. Yeah. So that in the resume. Bekitzer, that's all because of Loshen Hedyot. Yeah. Let's continue to the next case. More fascinating even. Hillel Hazoken, the famous Hillel Hazoken, also Hoyador Loshen Hedyot. He would also go along with agreements of Hedyotis, even if they're not initiated by Chazal. The Tanya says in the Brisa, in the Tosefta in Ksubas, Anshe Alexandria Hoy Mekachim es Nesherseim, Mazel Tov, the Yidden from the city in Egypt, Alexandria, they would be Mekadesh their wives. Very nice. We all know that at the moment of Kiddushin, is she an Eshes Ish? Yes. Do they live together? No. They take sometimes a year, Mikra Din, like the Hasidim do today. And what? And after a year, there's a chuppah, and the chuppah, they consummate the marriage, they're really married. You know what would happen in Alexandria? I don't know why. I looked into it, I don't know why. B'sh'as knisosan lechuppah, as they're about to enter the chuppah, the chosen kala, boin acherim the chotzin oisan mehem. Other people would come and snatch away the wife, the kala from the chosan, maybe, like these rulers, maybe like in Yavan, and snatch away from them and would be mezaneh, would be boil them. Yeah, and then give. What? And Chayta, yes, snatcher, they did with them. 1 second. Ubikshu chachomim lasus bnei mamzerim. So chachomim said the kids are mamzerim. We don't know, because maybe she had it with the other men. Holiness, I hope, but Lamaisa, it's a whole messed up situation. Maybe all the children, I don't know if the son is from him. Does he go back to him? Maybe Ba'oinus, she's allowed to go back to her husband. Yes, unless he's a Kohen. But we don't know who it came from. The whole situation is weird. Omer Hillel Hazoken. Hillel Hazoken wanted to find a solution. It was a very beautiful frum community in Alexandria. Yeah. And what? Hillel Hazoken didn't want everyone in Alexandria to be Chalila and Mamzer. Says Hillel Hazoken to the community in Alexandria, Aviu li ksubas imchem, bring me the ksuba of your mother, you who are claimed to be mamzerim. And all the shadchonim would say, is he from Alexandria? She's busy now. No Alexandria boys for you. Yeah. So Hillel wanted to find a solution and said to the boys and girls from Alexandria, bring me the ksuba of your mother. Have you looked ksuba siman? They brought him the ksuba. Umotza, he found, what's written in the ksuba? Shekosu ben, it says in the ksuba something very interesting. It says, lekshetikansi lechupa habili leintu. The people of Alexandria, the Chasonim, and I assume the Rabbanim behind them, would be aware of that issue. They would have like a clause in the ksuba saying like this, in the ksuba in the times of Kiddushin. There's ksubas Kiddushin, ksubas Nisuin, the whole two getting ksubas. At the time of Kiddushin, they would write, like today we have a vort, right? There's a vort with conditions. So they would write, when I'm a Kaddish you now, however, the Kiddushin would only apply when you actually stand under the chuppah with me. Which means if she was snatched 5 minutes before the chuppah, retroactively, Lamafresh, she was never his wife. So it's not nice to be snatched by some disgusting rule of a chulei, true, but Lamaisa, she's not a wife. Yeah, she's only Bichlal Mikudeshes If the chuppah, once chuppah takes place a year later, retrospectively, a year before she's mekudeshes, v'lo also b'nei mamzerim, mimela they're not mamzerim, because when she was taken captive by the wicked guy, then she wasn't in the business b'chlal lemafreya. Who says, mapitom, where's the halacha? It's not chazal, but that's a chokhmah of regular grassroots, as you call it, yeah? That's what people did. And Hillel Lozokin, even to the level of Eshes Ish and Mamzerus, even then Hillel said, yeah, we accept that norm, and even if it's not written, it's kilo written. That's their das, and Mimela, they're not considered to be Mamzerim. You okay? Okay, weiter. Now, one more case. We're not going to go into this case. We're going to just read, translate without yet. We're going to mention this tomorrow. I want to mention before we finish this year, before people log out, again, there will be shiur tomorrow, Metzia Hashem, regular time, regular everything. No shiur on Wednesday, no shiur on Thursday. Sorry, Ben Asmanim of 2 days I take instead of 3 weeks. And see you again on Sunday. No shiur Wednesday, no shiur Thursday. Maybe I'll get an email with a 5 minutes inspirational video, maybe not inspirational, whatever. Yeah, but no shiur Wednesday and Thursday. Thank you, just to make it clear. Now, Rabbi Yehuda, okay, so let's summarize. So we saw already 3 cases in which we say that the Loshen Balabatim, Loshen accepted by people, is an agreement, is binding, according to some Rishonim, even if it's not mentioned, it's known that in that place, that's what they do. Case number 1, an Oris writes to the Balabais, even if I sit there not doing anything with my arms crossed and sipping my coffee the entire year, that's a big coffee cough. Yeah, and what? And I'm not doing anything, you're still going to get your percentage? You have to give a percentage. Yeah, even if you didn't write it. The second case was a korban. A woman's korban, if it's a chiyuv, is her husband's responsibility. And if he is rich, he has to give her like a rich man's korban. It's part of the part of the agreement. And what? The korbanos before the marriage he has to give. After the marriage, he doesn't have to give her korbanos, pay for the korbanos of during the marriage. It's part of the agreement between husband and wife, which was not instigated by Chazal. Third case, people of Alexandria would have conditional kiddushin. Not conditional love, but conditional kiddushin, that if you stand under the chuppah, then and only then your kiddushin will retroactively apply. Otherwise, no. So if anything happens, aleinu, the kid is just from a pruya. He's not a mamzer. Yeah, let's say there is a kid from the first bila of the goy, no issues, so it's not nice, not good, not ehrlich, but he's a pnuya. A pnuya is not a mamzer. So these are the 3 cases. Comes case number 4. Rabbi Yeshua ben Kolcho Yodosh Loshen Hediot. The Tanya, it says in the Brisa, Rabbi Yehuda ben Kolcho Emer, Amal ve'es chaveroi, a person who lends to his friend, lo yemashkenenu yoiser mechoivoi. He should not ask for a mashkon that's more than a choiv. We're going to see the details how, yeah, but sometimes we saw that before actually, yeah, some people would lend $500 and take a mashkon, a collateral of $1,000, and they would manage it. They would even it out somehow. So then he says, no, you're not allowed to do that. Shekach koisev loy, because that's what's written in the shtar. Tashlum tedit lachalai kol kavel deichi. In other words, that whatever the tashlum you have, yeah, is against the mei mashkon, and more than that, you're not allowed to take. We're going to see that tomorrow. I'm not going now into here because I didn't yet prepare it. I just wanted to read the words. And Be'ezras Hashem, tomorrow we're going to go into the case of the mashkon, the 4th case of Loshen Hedyoit. And Be'ezras Hashem, we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you very, very much to everybody here. Navas Shalom Kolel, everybody in our YouTube channel, Torah Time and Kolel Lashon. And thank you. Have an amazing Chaf Zayin of Tafshin Pei Gimel. Thank you, and Atzloch Rabba B'chol Inyonim.